Hi, I'm just going to do a quick demo to show you how to retrieve a data table from a comma separated values file that's stored on GitHub in a repository. So we're accessing online, and it may be stored somewhere other than on GitHub, but we're accessing a file that's stored online. So I'll go to GitHub first. So I've got this CSV file with weather data stored in it. We need to get the link to that file, but because this is a CSV file, we need and on GitHub it is formatted, we need to get the raw data. So on GitHub for a CSV you can click on raw, and instead of showing you the formatted file it will show you the raw data. So we're seeing column headings separated by commas and rows of data, each with a set of items or columns in that data separated by commas. I'm going to copy the URL and go back to my notebook. So to create a data frame, we're first of all going to use a library called pandas. So we are going to import pandas so we can use it in our code, and we're going to import the whole library, the whole pandas library, import it and give it an alias. We give it an alias so that we can use a very small word to indicate that we're using that library. If we didn't use PD as the alias, we would have to type pandas dot in front of everything. With the alias we can just type PD dot, and that's just a little bit quicker. So we've got our URL and we're going to put that into a variable. There's the URL of our file on GitHub. And what we're now going to do is we're going to create a data frame. So we're going to use df as our variable name for storing our data frame. df is a common name to use for data frames, obviously df short for data frame. If you've got one data frame, df is great. If you've got more than one data frame, you're going to need to think of other ways to name each of those data frames that you're working with. Now we're going to use a function called read CSV, and this is in the pandas library, so we use pd dot read underscore CSV. And in the brackets we will type URL because it's the URL that we want to read the CSV from. If your CSV file is on your local computer and you are using Jupyter notebooks, also on your local computer, then you could just put the file path in here and that would do exactly the same thing. We're using Google Colab and therefore it's not quite so straightforward. So we're reading from GitHub and using the URL. So that will read our data into the data frame. Put that back. I'm now going to just output the data frame there so we can have a look, and there we go, that's the data frame. Now you'll notice that it's showing us the column headings. It's showing us at the bottom that this data set has 746 rows and 8 columns. So we're currently looking at the head, the top 5 records in the data set, and the tail, the last 5 records in the data set. So by default, if we were to say that we wanted to just look at the head, we can use the function head with the brackets after it, and if we were to run that, then we're just going to see the head rather than the head and the tail. So df is giving us the head and the tail, head is giving us just the head. We can specify that rather than just the first 5, say we want to see the first 12 records, so we can use head to specify the first however many records we want to see. Similarly, if we wanted to see the last few records, tail with empty brackets is going to give us the last 5, but if we put a number in the brackets then we can specifically say I want to see those last 12 records, or those last however many records in the data set. Now say we wanted to see a subsection in between, we can use iloc. So iloc will find what's at an index location and return that whole row at that location. So we can use this like we do with indexing in lists. iloc it allows us to access a particular index. So say we wanted to just access the first record in the data set, we can use iloc 0, and that's going to give us just the first record. Now because there's only one record, it's able to present it in a slightly different way. If we wanted to see the 500th record in the data set, which we haven't seen yet, then we can see that here. So we know that it's the 500th record and this is the data that's in it. Like lists, if we want to look for a specific subset, we can use slicing. So say we wanted to use the first, we wanted to look at the first 10 records. So with indexes 0 to 9, we can just put that into the square brackets and that's going to give us the records with the indexes 0 to 9. If we want to go from, say, let's go from the one with the index 20 up to the one with index 40. So we're going to put 41 in there because it goes up to the one below before the last index that we give it. So 20 to 40, there we go. We've got records 20 with the indexes 20 to 40. So we can access any subset of that data set that we want to access. So if we want to access a column rather than a row, then we can use the same syntax as we would use for a Python dictionary, and that is to just to label the, in a dictionary it would be a key, in the data frame it would be a column heading. So say you want to just have a look at or to access the items that are in the rain column, in the rainfall column, what we need to put in here is literally the column heading, which in this case is rain space millimeters. So it's important that you do the heading in exactly the same way as it is in the data table. So if I print that, if I show that, we've now got the head and the tail just of the rain column. You can do that with any of the other columns, so just using the column heading you can access that particular column. The last thing that I'll show you is something that's quite useful in terms of identifying the shape of a data set. So df.shape will just let us know what shape, how many columns, how many rows that particular data set has. Now, as we saw earlier, this particular data set has 746 columns, 8 rows and 8 columns, and that's what the shape is showing us. It comes in the form of a tuple. So we use indexing for indexing rows. We use the keys or their column names for indexing a column, and we can use shape to give us a tuple that'll give us the dimensions of the data set. In the next video, we'll have a look at how we can manipulate the data columns, manipulate the data in columns and create some statistics from them.